Hi and welcome back to my channel. I am Koala and this is my little nook in this end of the universe that we call YouTube. I am a shamanic practitioner mainly within Nordic shamanism, and I'm here today to continue the series with Nordic archetypes. Today I will talk about Hugin and Munin, which are two ravens in the Nordic tradition. So this video is actually posted on my Patreon first in March 2026, just in time for the first four, or together with the first 4 episodes in this series. So if you're watching this on YouTube, sorry you had to wait for this next season of the archetypes. So I will, in this video, I will talk about what the sources say, of course. If they say anything, they do. And then I will talk about what these ravens mean in modern shamanic practice. And also for me, what my relationship with these are. And I think those two will go quite hand in hand in this video. And then I will talk about if we can summon these ravens and for what purpose, and then could we honor them or celebrate them in any way, and why. And then I will thank you for watching. So let's get into it, shall we? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read a passage for you. It is from a collection of poems called Grimnismal, which is Icelandic, and I will read the Icelandic original text that is in this book, one of the sources mentioned in the description box, and then I will also try my best to translate it for you. Just bear with me, give me some grace. It's been quite a number of years since I read anything Icelandic, so yeah. It's gonna be with a heavy Swedish accent, but I still want to include that in this video. Hugin och Munin flyga varje dag, Jörgen grundifir, jomk ek of Hugin, att han aftren kommit, så shamk med Munin. So this translates to roughly, Hugin and Munin, every morning they fly, or every day they fly, around the world, and it's actually around the world of, because the word for world in this is Jormungrund, and Jormund, we know Jormungrand, we talked about that, we talked about him in another video, so it has to do with with Jormungrand. You know, he envelopes the world, so around him, basically. I am anxious for Hugin, that he won't come, that he hasn't come yet, or come back. However, I am more concerned for Munin. And I wanted to include this because this says a lot about 2 things that I'm going to talk about in this video. And the first one is that it talks about their purpose in the Nordic mythology and also the Nordic practice. So their purpose, Hugin and Munin, they are ravens that belong to Odin. And he has one of them on each shoulder, and every day he sends them out into the world, around the world, to basically see everything that he needs to see and to know and to remember. And then they come back and they tell him that in the evening. So that's what it means when it says that every day they go around the world. And then the other thing that this poem talks about is the fact that it gives an inkling of or a connection to the meaning of the 2 names. So he's anxious for Hugin. Odin is anxious for Hugin. And Hugin is, I'm going to talk about Hugin first. And then we have to remember that his more concerned about Munin, right? So Hugin comes from a word that is basically Hurgr, Hurgr, and also in that's like the ancient Norse Norse, and then in Swedish it's Hugin or Håg, which means something like the ability of the soul or the inclination of the soul, so or the inclination of ourselves, so the inclination to want to do things. So spiritual ability, the inclination of yourself, and thought, because the name Hugin is known short as just thought in Swedish, and Munin is known as memory, so thought and memory. And to go deeper into Hugin, we have thought, the ability to think, attention, or where we put our attention and where we incline our attention. That has to do with the word håg. And it's also connected to want, wish, and desire. So our håg is inclined to what we desire, what we want, what we wish. And it talks about an emotional state of mind that is very close to the heart. So one of the words that we still have håg in today, because we can use the word håg, it's just not that common in today's Swedish to use håg, but not that long ago we used it, and it's a part of a lot of words in Swedish today. Håg is the second half of the word for lovemaking in Swedish, which is älskog, and og is håg from the beginning. So älsk means love, to love, and in this case where we incline our love, and the verb love, in English it's a verb, love making. Älskog in Swedish is a word that describes the act of making love. So we could say that we are going to devote our time to älskog, or that we look forward to älskog with our loved one, or something like that. But it's not an everyday word. I think we use other words for it because it's not a verb. It's a descriptive word. So Hugin is supposed to be a manifestation of håg, Hugin, hågen, to where we incline our attention, where we incline our want and wish and desire. And it's also he's also a reflection of the ability to think, the ability to put our attention into things, and the ability to focus. So it's a word that encompasses all of that, and it's a bird that encompasses all of that. So there's also a dark side to hågen, which is when we lose this ability. So this can look like just in the middle of doing something, we just lose interest in it. We lose motivation, we lose the desire. And that used to mean that someone was thinking ill of you, or that someone wanted ill to come to you. So if you, back in the day, I don't really know when, it just says in the sources, it used to mean like this, it used to be like this. So back in the day, if you had the ability for premonition, you could have a premonition through this lack of håg. So lack of motivation, lack of desire, lack of will and want, and lack of focus. So the premonition could be that, or it could be something more manifested in real life, like if someone wanted harm to come to you, your door could fly open before they arrived, and that is something that's like a dark premonition, and that could come before you lose your hog for something. And another way you can lose your hog is to choke on something, like the air takes your breath away, or things like that. So everything that was kind of abrupt, if you suddenly had to sleep, you fell asleep from being very awake and very alert, then you lost your hog. So, yeah, I hope I have described that word a lot, and fish, enough by now. So, Munin is memory, and there aren't really any stories about that name. Munin is, I guess, a more direct translation from Old Norse, and it simply means memory. So, Hugin Munin stands for thought and memory, but it's so much more. It stands for Odin's, his entire spiritual life and his entire and his intelligence. And with spiritual life, I'm just translating the word själsliv from Swedish, which is hard to translate because själsliv means like spiritual life, just as spiritual ability or psychic ability with thought and the ability to think and where you turn your attention. So that whole part of his being, as well as his intelligence, his ability to remember, his ability to use his memory, his ability to obtain memory from the Munin. And so Hugin and Munin are, manifested in these birds or ravens that go out into the world to collect memory and thought and collect everything, so that Odin can take that from them, or they can deliver that to Odin at the end of the day. And this is something that, if we look at the poem again, where he's anxious about Hugin, he's anxious of not just Hugin returning, but what does it mean if he doesn't return? It means a diminishing of his ability to think, his ability to turn his attention to something or focus on something. It means the loss of Hog, the loss of everything I've just talked about. that regards Hugin or Hågen. And he's more concerned about Munin. So he's more concerned about his memory returning or not returning, losing his memory. So this can be interpreted as the fear of old age, the fear of a decline in health. And we can, if we want to, because everything is connected in the universe. This reminds me of the apples of Idun, the apples of Idun that keeps the gods young. So maybe she should come and give him an apple, and Hugin and Munin will return. So yeah, so that is a lot about what the sources say about Hugin and Munin. But they also say that these ravens, as all ravens in the Nordic tradition, has a connection to death, because they are scavengers. They eat dead animals, and they have a connection to the battlefield, to clear the battlefield. And I think it's quite interesting that we have the Valkyries, we have Freya, we have Hel, and we have all of these other forces in the Nordic tradition that, on the spiritual side, takes care of the souls that, when people die on the battlefield or in life, the battlefield of life maybe, then we have all of these gods and the goddesses and the spirits that take care of the soul, and then we have the ravens that symbolize the the physical, to take care of the physical, the material leftovers. That is not the word I was looking for, but I can't really remember. I think the word I was looking for is even worse. So I'll just call it leftovers. So you know what I mean. The corpses, on the battlefield. So, yeah, so that's their other connection, or the other thing that they are a symbol of these of this force that clears the battlefield after a battle, and that clears the material things, in opposed to all of the other forces that takes care of the soul and the spiritual side of death. And then I want to say that some sources say that we can replace Hugin Munin as ravens with other types of birds, and types of gulls, swans, and other birds that is Nordic and also feast on the dead. I do have another one in mind, actually, but I don't remember what it's called in English. And also eagles. But to me, the eagle has another place in the Nordic cosmology and cosmic, in the cosmos, because he's at the top of the tree of life, the top of Yggdrasil. Oh yes, and Håg also can be simply soul, so själ in Swedish. So Hugin, the name of Hugin can be both Hågen and also soul, a word for it. So it's like Håg means inclination to do things, and also, or everything I talked about, and then soul. And that's where we have the spiritual ability. When it comes to language and linguistics, there's so many things to dive deeper into, and it also becomes harder when I have to translate everything into English and make it make sense. So yeah. So I think I have remembered everything about the sources. Not that I did talk from memory, but it's so funny because I was doing this a couple of days ago, and in the middle or something, it just went away. When you go through a door and you forget what you were gonna do. I had that sense the entire time I tried to film this in English a few days ago, and it just got lost. Like I lost both Hugin and Munin halfway through, Hugin and my memory. So today I feel like they are with me. And I feel like I have remembered to have everything included today. I really hope so. And I think I just want to, before I go into the modern practice, I just want to say that I know that there are talk, amongst practitioners about the raven being the animal that leads the dead to the other side. That I know that, in some, I think it's more in popular culture, that when Vikings or people in that era was killed, that they were burned instead of buried, and that you had a raven on the ship that was burning, so that the souls could find a way to the afterlife. And as I'm talking about it, I think I've heard it more regarding popular culture, and it's become like a part of talk with, more along maybe with witches rather than shamanic practitioners. And I have never really worked with the raven as someone that brings people over the rainbow bridge. I haven't really thought about that until I did this I was gonna make this video. And I haven't even included this in the Swedish one because I forgot about that. So, what is my point? My point is that I had this in the back of my mind the whole time, and I've heard about it, when I have, in life. I've heard about it, but in my practice I've never come across it, that we have ravens to help, because, I've never come across it. So when I looked into Hugin Munin, I haven't looked into ravens overall, but I have some, Hugin Munin are basically the ravens of the Nordic tradition, and they are a big part of how we view ravens in the Nordic tradition, with the connection to death and the battlefield, and with their connection to thought and memory, and being Odin's helpers. So I have not found one page, one line yet about ravens having that role, which, is quite in line with my own experience so far. I have read it in popular culture, in books, and I have seen it in mentioned, but never with a source. And maybe there are sources with that information, but I have some really good sources here that, have information from other sources, and maybe I will go down that rabbit hole one day. But when we now step into the modern practice, the modern shamanic practice, and Hugin Munin and the ravens, I just want to, incorporate that there are no view of the ravens having that role as I am aware of. I'm not aware of that, and I don't work with the raven in that way. So let's see, what is these ravens in the modern practice? Well, so Hugin and Munin are thought and memory, and they are an extension of Odin, which means that they are an extension and a help to the shamanic practitioner. So to me, when I practice, and I have worked a lot with Hugin and Munin, a few years back I held monthly lives on Facebook, where I relayed messages. I draw runes and relayed messages from Hugin and Munin, what we should think about and what we should remind ourselves for the upcoming month, and then what we should focus on for that upcoming month. Since then, the focus part is something that I incorporate into my new moon reading, or new moon reading, or new moon spread, where I ask the Norns for the past, the present, and the future, and then what we should focus on for the coming month, or what I should focus on. This is also something that I offer, as an offering. And if you become a member on my Patreon, Tier Curious, the first new moon that you are a paying member. And I say paying member because there's an option for a 7-day trial. So if the new moon occurs during your trial period when you don't pay, then this is, for the next new moon. When you are a paying member on the Tier of Curious, then you will get a new moon spread from me that month. So it's a one-time thing, you could say. Well, if you are a member for a few months, 3 as a minimum, then you downgrade to the free tier for some time because of maybe financial issues or whatever, and then you grade up again. Of course, you're gonna get that again. So Hugin and Munin are extensions of and a help to Odin, depending on how you look at it. And I would say that I look at it as how experienced are you. So for Odin, Hugin Munin are a part of him, they are an extension of him. He sends them out into the world to gather information and then bring it back to him. So I view it as he's sending parts of himself out into the universe to like gather information. And you know, in the modern practice, Hugin Munin are very much attached to Odin and a part of Odin. So these ravens are a symbol for my intellect, my spiritual abilities or psychic abilities, my ability to think, to focus, to want, wish, desire, and my memory, as well as Odin's. So they are a part of us, and I really think that we can view these as archetypes and work with them and work with these aspects of ourselves. So I'm also gonna go into, before I'm going into exactly what I do and how I work with these ravens, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the raven as a symbol and an animal in the Nordic tradition. And I want to talk a little bit about Hugin Munin, you know, in regards to power animals or individuals, power animals, spirit animals, soul animals, familiars. That's not a word in the Nordic tradition, but I'm going to use it as a comparison. So Hugin Munin they are not power animals because they are individuals. They are faces of the raven. They are aspects of the raven. So if we have the spirit of raven here, then we have, you know, or here, then we have Hugin Munin over here. Remember when we talked about Fenrir in a video? We can use the wolf as a, you know, as an example here, because if wolf is our power animal, then the Fenrir can be an aspect of that power animal. Garmr can be an aspect. Gerenfreke can be an aspect. They can, you know, show us different aspects of ourselves that reflects in the wolf: instinct, wildness, trust issues, you know, everything like that, and hunting that the wolves do impacts, and being a pack animal, different aspects that we view as a part of the wolf. And if the wolf is our power animal, and this is the Swedish word kraftdjur. If the wolf is our power animal, then the wolf is one of the 9 that we have in the Nordic tradition. There are 9 worlds and there are 9 power animals that you have. You have them all, you just haven't met everyone yet. And if the wolf is your power animal, it's an aspect of yourself that you would probably need to work with or work on in the future if you haven't already. So a power animal isn't just an animal that runs alongside you, that you know, fight battles alongside, or, you know, something like that. Of course, you can view it as a part outside of you that helps you, but it is an integrated part of you. And working with a power animal, the goal is always to integrate that part of you, so that you know, you bring it out to look at, and then to see the dark sides and the beautiful sides, you know, the sunny side and the dark side of that animal, and you look at it and go, how does this apply to me? And then you work on those aspects, and when you work on those aspects, you integrate that animal, and so that it is once again a part of you, because the 9 worlds is a part of you, and so are the power animals. So raven can be your power animal, and it, you know, but Hugin and Munin aren't your power animals. Hugin and Munin can be aspects of that power animal. Maybe thought and memory are some things that you will need to work on when working with the raven as a power animal. If you hold a ceremony to meet a power animal and you meet the raven and you meet that raven and you look it in the eyes and you're like, Hugin, then Hugin, the desire to do things, the motivation, the inclination, the wish and want, and the ability to think and focus could be something you need to work on. And when you've done that, it becomes a part of you. And then if you still need to walk with that power animal and learn from it and learn with it, then you might see another aspect of it, and you might keep seeing and coming across the raven in different situations, because you still need to embrace something about that power animal. So in the sense of power animals, Hugin Munin are aspects of that, just as the Fenrir is an aspect of the wolf, Jormungand is an aspect of the serpent or the snake, and Sleipnir is an aspect of the horse, and Ratatoski is an aspect of the squirrel. So, is Hugin and Munin our spirit animals, andedjur? Because the Swedish word andedjur, which I translate into spirit, because ande is spirit. So spirit animal, to me, is an animal that I meet in dreams or in real life, that comes with a message to me. And when I have received that message and really integrated that message, let it land in my heart or my mind or whatever, and I have really received it, then that animal doesn't show itself anymore. So I'm gonna give an example without talking about the person is specific. I hope no one's gonna know who it is, I think. So I am an administrator for a large witchy group on Facebook, and there was a post where someone was talking about a bird that was setting up camp on their balcony. And they felt like this was a nice idea at first, but then it started pooping everywhere. And the sense from the post was that this person really wanted the bird to stay, but not poop everywhere. So the person wanted to know, what can I do to make the bird stay but not poop everywhere? And my response, I'm not going to talk about all of the responses or the discussions that was regarding this, but because the bird had started to come there less, and it felt like a rift in their relationship, if they had any rift in the relationship, because she had been feeding this bird and whatnot. So my comment on this was that maybe this bird is not your bird. Maybe this bird is a spirit animal that has come to relay a message, and it has stayed for as long as you need to receive the message. So I would suggest that you look at this bird and look what messages it can be to you personally. So you're not googling this type of bird, not googling poo on balcony or etc. Sit with it and go through all of your emotions and your thoughts and see what can the message be to you. And if the bird stays after that, maybe you can have a relationship with it, and it will stay, and it's not just a spirit animal in this sense. But if it leaves, then you have received what it came to give you, you thank it, and then hope that you will meet it again. But if it meets you again, maybe you will need to receive some poop again. Maybe you don't want that. So that's kind of how I view those two. And if the bird were to stay, if she was, because I also said you can try to have like a ceremony where you or a ritual where you sit down and you invite this bird into your circle, meditate on it, open your mind to it and see what it wants, and see if you can maybe ask it to not poop everywhere, if you can have a relationship of reciprocity with this bird without the poop on the balcony. And if the bird stays, and if this person successfully communicates with this bird and the bird stays and doesn't poop everywhere, maybe it is what other people or witches would call a familiar, which is, to me, a familiar is an animal that is an individual that has a physical manifestation in the real world and comes to you as a companion for a shorter or longer period of time. And a lot of our pets can be our familiars, but also wild animals, of course. So maybe this bird is a familiar if it chooses to stay. But the relationship with a familiar shouldn't be strained. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be that the animal brings you a lot of things that you don't want and not the things that you want. So in this case, it brings you poo, but it doesn't give you a reciprocal, if that's the word, relationship. So a soul animal, to me, if a raven was a soul animal, to me, then the soul animal is an animal that is somewhere between power animal and spirit animal. So a soul animal is an animal that comes often, that is a helper often, that comes not just with messages but with other types of help. We can maybe embrace their abilities or embody their abilities when we need them, but they are not a part of us in the same way as a power animal, or in the same way, and it doesn't come fleety in the same way as a spirit animal, and it doesn't have a physical manifestation in the real world as a familiar. So I know I have made other videos, or I've just planned to make other videos about this topic. But I thought it was good to bring up when speaking of ravens, because ravens are an animal that, or raven is an animal that is often mentioned when people talk about, oh, my spirit animal is a raven, or my power animal is a raven, and that sort of thing. So I know that the word spirit animal is not completely translatable to andedjur. It's not the same concept. So the concept of spirit animal in other traditions, like when you Google spirit animal, it's not the same as the one I've talked about now. I've talked about spirit animals in the Nordic tradition, and I've talked about power animals in the Nordic tradition as kraftdjur. Kraft means power, which means that the powers of that animals are a part of us, or we should get to know those. So, now, how do I work with the raven, and how do I work with Hugin Munin? So, as I mentioned a few years ago, I hosted lives on Facebook where I draw runes for messages from these birds, thought and memory. And that is how I kind of started out diving deeper into my relationship with these birds. The Hugin Munin had been a part of Odin when I worked with Odin before that, but they had been more of a concept that I hadn't really dove deeper into. And then I wanted to get to know them, so I started to draw runes and, talking to them through the medium of runes, for me and for other people. And then I started meeting them in journeys, and that can look like either I meet Odin and then I meet the birds and I commune with them in a meditation, or in the journey, or it can look like one of the ravens land on my shoulder, and which shoulder tells me who it is, because Hugin belongs on my right side and Munin belongs on my left side. That's just the way it's always been. And when I journey with Hugin Munin as a part from Odin, or when I am Odin, you can say. In that case, I am Odin. I am the wielder of the magic. I am the savior. I am the shaman in that scenario. I am Odin in that scenario. And one of the birds land on the shoulder, and then they most often hop up to the top of my head, and then I am lifted, like my awareness is lifted into this bird, and then I follow that bird when it's sent out into the world. So they often come when I have a purpose. So one of the purposes that I have worked with Hugin Munin on in the past was after I had a major trauma, like 11 years ago. I had a major trauma, and when that happened, or after that, I experienced my memory palace sinking in quicksand. That is how that's how I relate the experience to other people, to my therapist, that it felt like my memory palace were sinking and I was scrambling to save parts of it. Every time I tried to reach anything, it just sunk, and I got bits and pieces of it. And I had a marvelous archive. I remembered every person I had ever met, every word they had ever said. I remembered things that made other people uncomfortable when I met them 20 years later, because they were like, how do you remember this? And I was like, why don't you? So I had a really good memory. And then I had this traumatic event, and I felt like a lot of it just went away. And I can talk about that in another video, and exactly how I did, and what came of it and how it looks now. But basically what I want to relay in this video is that after that I looked for a way to get my memories back, and not just get my memories back, because I knew they were there, they were just buried because of this trauma, but I wanted to rebuild. So I realized after a while that I needed a way to rebuild so that everything could fall into a new place. And that's the feeling I got when I had done it all, that it's easier to access it now again. So I still have a vision in my head, both of the memory palace before, but I can't open the drawers of my archive. And I have a vision of how it looked when it was beneath quicksand. And then I have a much clearer picture of what it looks like now, and how I can utilize my library of knowledge and my library or my archive of memories. And I utilized my relationship with Hugin Munin and those as a part of me when I rebuild the mental image. I rebuilt it in the outside world as well, through organizing order with the Ansus, the rune of Ansus, which is one of the runes that I connect to Hugin Munin. One of them. So this is when I purposefully worked with Hugin Munin, was when I was gonna rebuild, and when I was rebuilding, and even more after I had rebuilt my memory palace. It's now like a small cottage. One of those cute ones that looks adorable from the outside, and then when you step in you're like, there are so many rooms. How can it be this big when it looks so tiny from the outside? And that's the way I want it. So in that, and when I enter my memory palace, I can become either one of them to look through it. I can journey with them, or I can send them out to gather information. And I can choose what to do, but it's more so that I go into a journey with a purpose, and then what needs to happen. So that is how I can work with. I have worked with Hugin Munin, my ability to think, my desire, and everything like that in Hugin, and my memory in Munin. These two go together, I think. You can't have one without the other. You can, of course, have memories left from before, which I think happens when people go through dementia. They have old memories, but they lack the ability to form new ones or connect with them or have a timeline of it. And going through a major trauma, it cuts the cords in a similar way. People that have gone through a major trauma, you don't have to have the diagnosis of PTSD. Like I was diagnosed with PTSD several years ago after that big trauma, but I have CPTSD from my childhood. So you don't have to have the diagnosis to not be able to think consecutively or like recollect things consecutively on a timeline, which is one of the reasons why, if you've been through a major trauma and you have to get involved with the police, and then they ask you, well, then what happened? Then what happened? You need to be able to tell me what happened first, and then second, and then third, and how did you do it? How would you resolve it, and what did you do? There's no way a person that has gone through a trauma can say everything consecutively, or in the right order, because the memories are jumbled. That's just something that happens on a fundamental chemical level. So to be able to remember, we can absolutely, and this is where I go into summon. So this is all about summoning, summoning and working with them. And my relationship with Hugin and Munin has been a lot about needing them. So I did have a relationship with them before, because they've always been a part of my life since childhood. But I dove deeper into it after my major trauma. When I experienced this jumbleness, I knew everything was there, but I couldn't reach it. So then I worked with Hugin and Munin. So that is one reason we can summon Hugin and Munin as Hugin and Munin. But then we can also, of course, summon a raven when we want other aspects of the raven as an animal, as a helper. Because we can summon different animals to help us if we know what aspect of them we want. But when I talked about Fenrir, I talked about the importance of us knowing exactly what we're working with. So if you are going to summon the raven, you need to know the raven before. So if the only part of the raven you know is Hugin and Munin, then summon those. But if you have a deeper connection to the animal raven, because maybe it is your power animal, or maybe you have worked with it so many times that you know what it stands for, what it brings to the table, then you can absolutely summon the raven. The raven's connection to death is something that makes us, or should make us, a bit wary of our relationship with the raven, and not just the relationship with the raven, but when and how we summon the raven, how we work with the raven. So that is something we should remember. Can we honor and celebrate Hugin and Munin? Absolutely. And in the process, you are honoring and celebrating your own memory, your own spiritual abilities, your own ability to think, your ability to form sentences, to remember, to function, and your hog, your inclination to want and need and desire and the focus, but also maybe the memory you have of situations, people, and the memory, all the memories you have. So you can honor the memories, and you can honor what you are remembering. So maybe people. So if you have a time of year, maybe around Hell's Eve in the autumn, where you, or when you honor your dead, you can also honor Hugin Munin, especially Munin with memories. So, yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing to honor any of these archetypes that I have talked about so far, and especially Hugin and Munin because of what they stand for. So, I want to end this video by thanking you for watching, and I want you to remember to comment, like, subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And I also want to remind you that I have a Patreon where this video first came up. Where for all the free members, there is an extra video or bonus content every month, and then I have the tier of Curious with even more bonus content, and that is when you start supporting me, with a small sum each month. And then I have other tiers for whatever you want to take part in, ceremonies or courses or anything like that. So if you feel like that sounds like fun and you want to be a part of my shamanic community on Patreon, then all the links are in the description box, and I will see you soon. Walk in beauty. Walk with Hugin and Munin and see what they can teach you. Shingling.